I'm Harry Rock, and welcome to another edition of the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. This is a collaborative effort between Tina Gorman, Executive Director of the Westfield Senior Center, and Pete Coles, producer of WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15. Our topic today is the Real ID compliant driver's license, and my guest is Michelle Alex. Do I have that correct?
You do.
All right. Michelle Alex, who is the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Mass Registry of Motor Vehicles. We'll be discussing the Real ID compliant driver's license, why you need it, what forms are required to get it, what it costs, and where you can get it. So we've got a lot of information, and I know that when I heard about this topic, and thanks to Tina Gorman, who sets these, all our speakers up and our topics up, I was really excited to learn about it because I've just gone through the process myself. So I do have my Real ID, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into some of the details behind this. But it's certainly a topic that everybody needs to be concerned about, whether you're a senior or not. If you are basically, do I have this correct? If you're of a legal driving age, which is 16, is it 16? You need to think about having a Real ID. Is that correct?
That is correct, Harry, and it's great to be with you. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity for us to be with you, and big thank you to the Westfield Council on Aging as well. So happy to be here. And yes, the Real ID will be required, Harry, starting on May 3rd of the year 2023. So it is in the near future that at airports and at certain federal offices, that security will be looking to see a Real ID federally compliant credential from anyone 16 years old and up. So it's important for people to start to think about and get it. So congratulations. I'm glad that you have your Real ID. I've got mine too. So we will be able to board that airplane to fly domestically, Harry, starting May 3rd of next year. So we really want to remind folks that the deadline is May 3rd, 2023, as I mentioned. And if you plan to fly domestically, starting May 3rd and beyond, you will need to show security at the airport either a Real ID, federally compliant credential, which can take the form of either a driver's license or a Massachusetts ID card. Either one of those can be upgraded to become a Real ID, or you can show a valid and unexpired passport.
Valid and unexpired, right? That's correct. Okay, that
Yep.
makes sense. So it would make sense for people to really think about getting the Real ID versus carrying a passport around. I use our passport when we travel internationally. We were just in Iceland and Norway this summer, and I needed my passport, but it's a cumbersome document to carry around, and you certainly don't want to lose that. So having the ID, which you need to have a driver's license anyway, it makes sense to go ahead and just make that transition to the Real ID from a driver's license.
I agree. It's a little more convenient than carrying around a passport booklet.
Yeah, no question. The other thing I want to mention, and then we'll start getting into how you get it and what's required, but I was actually surprised, Michelle, that I was expecting a whole different card. And the Real ID, it looked exactly like my former driver's license, except it has a star on it. Is that correct? Is there any other thing that's different about it?
That is correct. The only difference is there is a star in the top right-hand corner, and that will indicate that credential is a Real ID, federally compliant credential.
Yeah, so, and that's what people need to understand is it really does look just like your old driver's license, but there's a gold star in the top right-hand corner, and that's really what designates this as being different from your regular driver's license, but otherwise exactly the same. So Where can I apply for a Real ID? Can I do this online, or do I have to do this in person?
To obtain a Real ID, Harry, you do need to do that transaction in person at either any registry of motor vehicles full service center or at AAA. Our AAA partners are also able to upgrade a person's driver's license or ID card. As long as they're a member of AAA, they could go to AAA and obtain the Real ID. So it does indeed, Harry, require an in-person visit, as I said, to either the Registry of Motor Vehicles or to AAA if you're a member. However, people can get ready online, and we really want to remind folks that you can start the transaction online, and you can do several steps of that transaction online at mass.gov/RMV. And we also have a web page that's really dedicated solely to Real ID, and that website address is mass.gov/ID. So either one of those websites will allow you to begin the process of upgrading the Real ID to a Real ID. Again, mass.gov/RMV or mass.gov/ID. You can complete the application. You might even be able to verify online your lawful presence document. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into some details about the documents that you need. But it is true, to obtain a Real ID, it does require the person to go in person to get the Real ID, but you can start the transaction online. And we encourage folks to do that because you'll save a lot of time by getting as much done in advance prior to your visit to either the registry or to AAA.
You know, I want to speak to that. My wife and I did go through that process of going online. It wasn't difficult. It just took a little bit of time to go through the questions and make sure that we had all the right documentation, which we'll talk about in a minute. But when we actually went in, and we're AAA members, so we went to AAA, I don't think I was in the office 10 minutes. I just had to show the documentation. They go on to show that I've already basically been pre-qualified to be at that stage of doing it in person. I think I was out of there in 9 or 10 minutes. It was really quick and easy. So kudos to you in putting that together. Is the Real ID, can people go to any RMV location, or is it just specific locations?
Any RMV location, I believe, except the Chicopee location. And Harry, I'd like to double check on that, and maybe we can provide after a link to our website. All of our open locations are listed, and so we always recommend that people visit our website first, mass.gov/RMV, and pull up the locations tab. And it lists all of our locations. We have at least 27 different service centers across the state. And I believe AAA has at least 30 different AAA offices. So you really have your choice of location. But again, I need to double check on the Chicopee location because that might be, I'm not sure if they're doing Real ID transactions, and I will let you know.
Okay, that sounds great. And does a person need to have a reservation to go to the RMV, or can they just walk in?
Yes. The Registry of Motor Vehicles is by appointment only. So thank you for reminding me to talk about that. Because of COVID, we went to an all reservation only system. So we no longer accept walk-ins at any of our registry service centers.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. So you will need to make a reservation in advance, similar to AAA. AAA has gone to the same system, appointments only, no walk-ins. But for the Registry of Motor Vehicles, you can make a reservation a few different ways. You can go online to mass.gov/RMV and choose make or cancel a reservation, and you can make your reservation online. The other thing that you can do, if you are age 65 or older, or if you have a disability, we have a reservation line, Harry, that is dedicated to our customers customers age 65 plus,
Really?
plus also people with disabilities. Yes. So the telephone number to call, Harry, is area code 857-368 8005. So if you're listening, if your viewers want to jot this number down, I'll repeat it again, but it is our age 65 plus reservation line to make a reservation to visit the Registry of Motor Vehicles. The telephone number is area code 857-368 8005. And then one other perk that we have for anyone 65 or older, we have actually a 65 plus hour of business. And that is every Wednesday morning from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. We dedicate that hour, Harry, to any customer 65 or older who needs to come in and visit the Registry of Motor Vehicles to do any transaction, not just to upgrade their license or ID card to a real ID, but if they need to do any sort of registry transaction and they'd like to come in when it's a little less busy, we have a dedicated hour from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. every Wednesday morning at every service center. So you can make, and
Wow.
it's reservation only. So sometimes folks show up without a reservation, and we might not be able to, take them at
Accommodate.
that time. Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. I did not know that. So for our seniors, for the people that are watching this this interview, it's important to know that you can find an hour every Wednesday that's dedicated just to our age group. So there's a benefit to getting older, I guess. But that's nice to know. That's really interesting. And you mentioned that the Real ID can be also procured at any AAA location in Massachusetts, of which you've mentioned there's about 30 of those.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And to make a reservation for AAA, you could go online to AAA.com and make your reservation online. You might even be able to call your local AAA office. But I know the online, just like the registry's online website, it's really convenient to use for those who want to do it online.
Right. So let's get into how do you actually apply for it? Let's talk about that process.
Sure. So first of all, the Real ID Act of 2005 was passed, which requires customers to provide the Registry of Motor Vehicles with certain acceptable documents. So we are following, Harry, guidelines that were created by the Real ID Act of 2005, which actually was the result of 9/11. So just to give folks a little bit of history as to why we're even talking about the Real ID, that is all based on 9/11, which then the Real ID Act was passed, which says a person, if they wish to apply for a license or an ID card, a person must provide certain credentials, and those credentials must verify. So what you can do when the Registry of Motor Vehicles sends out a reminder notice, Harry, when a person's license is due to expire, which is very helpful. And in that envelope is a checklist. So we do have an acceptable documents checklist, and it details every category and every document that the registry and AAA are able to accept. So in order to obtain a Real ID credential, a person must provide us with one document proving lawful presence, and it must verify. So not only provide us with a lawful presence document, and lawful presence document means that the person has a document which proves that they are legally living in the United States, and it also proves their date of birth. So on the acceptable documents checklist, Harry, there are more than 10 documents or 11 documents that a person could choose from that will verify lawful presence. So that's the first step. And a couple examples of those lawful presence documents include, Harry, a valid and unexpired U.S. passport, a United States birth certificate. It must show certain criteria. For instance, the parents' names. It must have a seal of the registrar. It must have been issued within 1 year of the birth of that person. And other documents include employment authorization documents, a permanent resident card, a foreign passport with a visa. So, and like I said, there are more than 11 documents that a person can choose from. Now, what is also required, Harry, is that if there is some sort of a name change and the name that appears on the lawful presence document, if it does not match the customer's current name, the customer, in order to obtain a real ID, must prove legal name change by the registry with either and or a marriage license, a divorce decree, or a court document that proves that they legally changed their name. And the marriage license must have been issued by a municipality. And let me just backtrack one step, because Harry, I forgot to mention when I talked about the US birth certificate, the other criteria for us to accept it and verify it is that it must have been issued by a municipality, a city, state, county birth certificate. I want listeners and viewers to understand that as well. These documents must be originals too. That's another very important qualification and requirement for obtaining the real ID. All documents the customer brings into the Registry of Motor Vehicles must be original, or the one exception in the case of the US birth certificate, it must be a certified version, okay? So other than that, all documents must be originals. We cannot accept any photocopy documents, nor can we accept any laminated documents, except for your driver's license or your Mass ID card, which we issued to you. So those are the first two steps: verifying lawful presence and proving legal name change if applicable. The third step, Harry, is a person needs to also bring one document that proves their social security number. And again, on the checklist on the second page, there are 6 documents listed. One obviously can be the social security card. However, if you've laminated your social security card, we cannot accept it. You would you would, because Harry, by the requirements, the federal mandates of the Real ID Act of 2005, we now must scan in every document that is given to us. And not the laminated document or a photocopy document does not scan well, if at all.
Okay.
So that's why no laminated documents, no photocopy documents. But so to prove social security number, you could use your social security card as long as it's not laminated, or you could use a W-2 form that shows all 9 digits of your social security number, or a 1099 form issued by either the Social Security Administration or some other financial institution, or you could use a pay stub, Harry, or last but not least, a Social Security denial notice issued by SSA. So there's 6 documents that a person could choose from to prove Social Security number. Last step is proving that you are a Massachusetts resident. For the Real ID, you will need to bring in 2 documents that prove that you are living in Massachusetts. One can be your valid and unexpired driver's license, or your valid and unexpired ID card issued by the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Or you could use a recent Registry of Motor Vehicles correspondence, piece of mail. In order to prove Mass residency, Harry, the document must show the person's name as well as their residential address. We cannot accept any document that has just a post office box number or in care of. It must show your name. It must show your residential address. Other items that prove Massachusetts residency include any bill dated within, not any bill, I'm sorry, a bill, utility bill, a cell phone bill, a credit card bill, a medical bill, dated within 60 days of your visit to the Registry of Motor Vehicles. So on this checklist that I mentioned, Harry, there are more than 25 documents listed that the registry or AAA can accept from a customer to prove mass residency. Couple other common examples might be a checking account statement, a savings account statement, must be dated within 60 days of your visit to the registry, or a property tax bill or an excise tax bill from the current year, or a rental agreement, a lease, or a mortgage statement. So documents like that. So that checklist really helps people walk right through the process. And that is what you need to provide us with in order to apply for the Real ID. This can be done, Harry, while a person comes in to renew their driver's license. And most folks are doing it at that time when they are renewing their driver's license or their ID card. However, in Massachusetts, people always ask, well, how far in advance can I renew my driver's license? The answer is 364 days prior to the expiration date.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is great. So we don't want customers to procrastinate, right? I read something, as human beings, we tend to procrastinate, which might be true for some of us. But in Massachusetts, you have up to 1 year prior to the expiration date to renew your driver's license or your ID card. So that's your renewal window. So you can come in at any time
But
and renew.
that doesn't change the expiration date, though, correct? So if I came in
Correct.
2 months early, it's still going to show my original expiration date.
You are absolutely right.
Okay,
You're not
that's
going
good
to
to
lose
know.
any time. Yeah, if you decide to renew 8 months prior to the expiration date, you will not lose any time. Your new expiration date is always based on the year that the credential expires, and you'll have and when you renew, you have that new credential for 5 years.
Oh, really? So this
Yes.
is
Yes.
good for when is my expiration
Yeah,
date?
if
Oh,
you
2027. You're right.
You got it.
It is 5
Yep.
years, right?
You got it. Yep. And people also ask, Harry, another common question is, will I have to do all of these steps over again when my Real ID expires the next time? And the answer is no. No, you will need to. And now, obviously, things change, right? This might change within 5 years by the time you need to renew your driver's license again. But you do not need to prove lawful presence again because we have scanned that document. We have verified that document, and all of that information is in our system. Same with the Social Security number. We've captured your document that proves and verifies your Social Security number. So, but things change. That's why we always want to recommend and remind folks to always go to mass.gov/RMV, and that is where the most up-to-date information is found.
So, question, and my wife and I did this back in March, and we went AAA. And I will say that, and we were working on this the night before or a couple of days before we had our appointment made. And the biggest challenge of this was just trying to find all the documentation. It was really going through your checklist, which was really, the process that you have laid out is excellent. So it's easy to follow. The probably, and what I would say to our listeners, the biggest challenge for us was trying to find, okay, we need a phone bill, we need a tax bill, or we need a utility bill. Those are the things. And again, within 60 days, and just, okay, going through our files, okay, we got this one, we got that one. Do we have enough of these? Do we have enough of that? It's kind of just a little bit of a puzzle. What I'm trying to remember, though, is, so my wife and I went in, we had 2 appointments, one 15 minutes apart from the other. Were we required, I honestly, I can't remember how we did this. Did we have to each have our own set of documents, or were we able to share? So when I went over and I was done, could I hand those over to her if her name was on it? Do we have to have different ones, or can we have the same ones?
In terms of lawful presence, verifying lawful presence, no, you must have your own lawful presence document.
Okay, so we had to each have our own.
That's
Okay,
correct. That's
okay.
correct. And the same goes, Harry, for the Social Security number. The only exception would be proving Massachusetts residency. You might have a joint bank account, and if your significant other's name is on that statement, as well as your name, we can accept that for them as well. So yes, in terms of proving Massachusetts residency, you might be able to use the same document as a family member, as long as it shows your name and your residential address. We can verify that you are a Massachusetts resident, but you must have your own document to verify lawful presence and date of birth and social security number, as I mentioned.
Okay, so that means that if I found I'm just going to pick a random date here. I'm using an April 22 electric bill. My wife would not be able to use that same bill. She would need to find a May 2022 electric bill or something of that nature. Is that correct? As long as both our names are on it.
In terms of the electric or utility bill, it must be dated within 60 days of your visit to the registry.
Right.
And it must show your name. And yes, it's okay if it shows another household member's name on it. You can both use that for your transaction.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, that's what I was looking for, right?
Yeah, the important thing also is the date to, remind folks that to prove mass residency, if they're using a bill. And this is, again, all, as you said, and thanks for the kind words about the process and the checklist, because it really does help folks get organized in advance. We want people to, again, pre-stage like you did, and thank you. I'm so glad to hear it only took 10 minutes. Fewer than 10 minutes to obtain your real ID and renew your driver's license. That's fantastic, because you did the work ahead of time, Harry. That's critical that our customers get organized and pre-stage or get their applications ready online. And that's where the Westfield Council on Aging has become integral to this process too, because they might have volunteers in their computer lab, or they might have staff or a volunteer who might be able to help you get ready online, even if you don't have a computer at home, or maybe you don't feel comfortable using your computer at home. There are people who can guide you. Also, librarians have been fantastic in terms of helping folks use the computer. Maybe not all libraries, but many are able and willing to help a person get ready online. The legwork, though, does fall on the customer to get the documents, and don't delay. We do expect to be very busy, as you can imagine, Harry, 23, as that deadline looms closer and closer. So we want people to, if they're thinking about getting that real ID, do it sooner rather than later. And I talked about being able to do that, upgrading to real ID while you renew your driver's license or your Massachusetts ID card. But let's say your credential isn't going to expire for another couple of years, right? So you're not technically eligible to renew your driver's license or ID card. But what you can do for a fee of $25 is replace what you currently have. It's the same application, and you would check off replace instead of renew. If you're not eligible to renew yet, you can replace. And at that time, fee of $25, you can upgrade your standard license or ID card to a real ID by providing and verifying all of the documents that are required.
And it keeps the original expiration date intact.
You got it.
Okay.
We cannot alter that expiration date because you are only replacing that credential, not renewing it.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I thank you for mentioning, a lot of seniors, depending on their background and, the time period they were growing up in, just didn't grow up with computers. So that is that's a barrier to them. And as soon as they hear, oh my gosh, I've got to go online, that just stops them. But I appreciate your comment, and I will double check with Tina Gorman, and I would encourage all of our viewers to check with the Westfield Senior Center to see what is available for help. I am guessing, knowing Tina Gorman and the job she does with our seniors, that there's all kinds of help available, but I would encourage our viewers to check with them. So if you're struggling, if you don't have a computer, or you're struggling on just how to navigate the process on your computer, get in touch with the Senior Center. I'm sure that they can help you. And also our Athenaeum here, the Westfield Athenaeum in Westfield. I would think, I know that they have a huge computer bank, and I know that their staff is very helpful. I'm guessing that they would be very helpful in helping as well. Where can people find the checklist that has all of those items that you just mentioned? Where can they get that? Because they got to start with that checklist to know what they have available.
Absolutely. It can be found online, Harry, at mass.gov/RMV. It will be sent to them when they receive their license reminder renewal in the mail. I'll also send both documents. We have the checklist, but also a little flyer that describes the difference between a standard and a real ID. And I'll be happy to send both of those documents over to Tina and send her. I could even send her copies of each, so she'll have them on hand at the Council on Aging.
Again, just validating some of the things that you've said previously here. It is important to go online and go through that first really accreditation part that allows you, that says, yes, you are ready to go to the next step, which is to go in person with your documentation. And I can verify that as soon as I got in front of the person who was helping me at the AAA, the first thing she did was, have you been online? Did you get your valid, or I'm trying to think of what the proper term is. I'm calling validation.
Verify.
Verify. And they went online and said, "Yep, there you are. Yep, you're all checked, and you have approvals on all the 4 or 5 or 6. I can't remember how many questions there were, but there was a certain checklist that we had to go through. It was, again, very easy, but they are looking for that before you can go any further to make that happen." So we've talked about the cost. And my wife and I were fortunate that our driver's licenses were expiring in March. So we said, you know what? We've got to get these renewed anyway. Let's do the Real ID then. So the fee that we paid was just our regular fee, the $50. Is that correct?
That's correct, Harry. It costs $50 to renew a driver's license. If you hold a Massachusetts ID card, an ID card costs $25 to renew. And
to your point, this is good for 5 years. So really the cost per year is only $10. So a real bargain here for Massachusetts.
I agree.
One of the few places where I could say we're getting a bargain. But again, just as a reminder, even if you're not eligible to renew, don't stop. You need to really be thinking about getting this done. It's only going to cost you $25, and it will also keep your original expiration date.
That's right.
And the other thing I wanted to, because there may be people out there who say, well, I don't fly. I'm never going to be flying. Why do I need a real ID? But there's I meant to ask you this early on, but what other reasons will people be required to have a real ID besides just flying?
Besides flying domestically, Harry, people will need to show a real ID at secure federal office buildings. So secure federal buildings. The JFK building in Boston, most likely the Social Security Administration office in Springfield and Worcester. The larger cities, the Social Security Administration offices do have a security desk at the entrance. And starting May 3rd, 2023, a person or a valid passport to gain is another federal building where a real ID will be required starting May 3rd, 2023. And some other examples, if you were going to travel to Washington, D.C., and you wanted to take a tour of one of the congressional buildings there, again, you will need to show 3rd a real ID or a valid passport to gain entry. So it's certain federal office buildings and to fly domestically and also to access military bases as well.
Okay. So I think it's safe to say, even if you say, well, I'm never going to be flying, I don't think I see a reason for it. You never know when there's going to be a reason. And you really should just plan on going through this process. It's not difficult. It's not time consuming. It's just a matter of getting the documentation in front of you, going through the process of trying to find what you need for validation, forms of ID that are valid, both certainly within a 60-day time frame as well. But make sure that you just go through that process and just get this done. And don't assume that you're not going to need it past April 3rd of 2023. It's really critical that we just all move forward, and sooner than later.
May 3rd, 2023. That's the date to keep in mind. But you're absolutely right. Your advice is spot on, Harry. Get it done. Do it. Even if you think you might not need it, you can get it if you have the job verified.
Right.
So.
And once again, where can they find information on the Real ID?
On our website, Harry, at mass.gov/RMV, or also on our Real ID website, which is mass.gov/ID.
Fantastic. As we wrap up here, I just want to say to our viewing audience here from the greater Westfield area here, if you've got questions on this, definitely go to the Westfield Senior Center. They will have information on it. Tina Gorman and her staff are very individual oriented. They will be happy to sit down with you and at least point you in the right direction. I'm guessing that they probably have, and I can find out, but I'm sure that they probably have some computers available there as well. And if you don't have a computer, you can certainly go to the Westfield Athenaeum, because they have one room just dedicated full of computer stations. So it's very easy to get in, and their staff would be very very willing to help you go through this process. So don't look at this as a barrier. Don't look at this as, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can get this thing done. You can get it done. There's help available. You have two excellent resources, either through the Senior Center or through the Athenaeum for computer access, and certainly the Senior Center for any advice that goes forward. Michelle, as we wrap up here, any final points that we have forgotten? We've covered a lot of ground here. Anything else that they should know, or do you think we've got it covered here?
We have covered a lot, and we really cannot emphasize enough that to get ready, start now, don't delay, and start getting your documents in order. And absolutely utilizing those resources in the community to begin your transaction and application online. So I just want to say thank you so much, Harry. Thanks for this great opportunity, and thanks to all your viewers as well, and to Tina and the folks at the Senior Center. And hopefully I'll be able to see you soon.
Yes, we would love to have you come out here. So I want to just say thanks to my guest, Michelle Alex, the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Mass Registry of Motor Vehicles. We have been talking about the Real ID compliant driver's license, the reasons of why we need to get it, the importance of getting it done sooner than later, the easy access to finding the information, going through the preliminary checklist where you've got to get approved before you can go in person, and also the need to either go through the RMV in person or to a AAA in person. You need to make a reservation. You cannot just show up, so make sure that you're getting that reservation done in time. And the other thing that I learned is that for individuals age 65 and over, there's a separate registration number that you can call, 857-368-8005. Every Wednesday between 9 and 10, this is a seniors only hour, so you can get information devoted to you, and it will cut down the call volume if you're calling in at that time.
Harry, may I just interject one thing? The reservation line, I'm sorry, I did not clarify this. The reservation line, that 857-368-8005 number, is staffed from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. So we have staff waiting to take your phone call to help you make a reservation to visit the registry. And the reservation line hours are 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And you're absolutely right. Dedicated senior hours in person at the registry from 9 to 10 every Wednesday morning.
That's it. Got it. Okay. Now I got the distinction. Perfect. I want to say special thanks to Pete Coles, our WCPC Westville Cable Channel 15 manager and producer, for his help in support to make this show possible. And on behalf of Pete Coles and Tina Gorman, I'm Harry Rock. This has been another edition of the Westville Council on Aging Presents on WCPC Westville Cable Channel 15. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Get that Real ID taken care of. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks.